Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. I hope that the connection is finally clear. We are experiencing some technical difficulties, and I think it's very appropriate to have this talk simply because technology wise, we are being pushed with these new realities. So, can I be heard right now? Is this okay?
Yes,
All
sir.
right. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Nathan Season, the coordinator of the FEU Career and Placement Office. Welcome to another round of Pep Talk. This is the Pre Employment Preparation Talk webinar series. This is our seventh episode. So, Pep Talk is a regular virtual series designed to prepare the graduating students for employment by equipping them with the necessary knowledge through talks touching on various topics delivered by industry professionals and experts. And on your screens now, you guys can see our previous Pep Talk webinars. You guys may rewatch them on your most convenient time at the Career and Placement official Facebook page. And today's webinar is also being live streamed via Microsoft Teams. We are also live via FEU and Capo official Facebook pages. So you may rewatch all of the episodes through those Facebook pages. Later, to participate in our question and answer part, you may submit your comments and questions anytime at our conversation page, which can be found at the right side of your screen if you're using a desktop, or at the live Q&A tab if you're using a mobile phone or other portable device. Okay, so since the advent of social media in the early 2000s, communication in the online world has become an integral part of our everyday life. However, less attention has been put forward towards realizing the importance of online etiquette. But come to think of it, guys, the new realities brought to us by these current circumstances have pushed people to migrate and rely mostly online, even including this pep talk webinar, right? So not only in terms of personal communication, but also in terms of professional work life. That's why in our today's episode, our topic is online etiquette, adapting to the new normal. So please stick with us until the end of the program because I'm sure you will learn a lot. So thank you for your cooperation and enjoy the rest of the program. And now, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, may I call on the Director of the Career and Placement Office to give her opening remarks. Please welcome to your screens Miss Maria Carmencita Suva Alfonso. Ma'am, the screen is yours.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can
Yes?
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Nate. Um, Nathan.
Yes?
Nathan.
Hello? Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah. You can hear me? So I'll just continue with here on the phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm really having technical difficulties here. Thank you very much for being here. Our distinguished speaker, our Vice President Joven Castro, deans, faculty members, students, and co-employees, good afternoon, and thank you for taking a time out of your busy schedule to join us today. The recent academic year showed us a preview of how things will be, even after the pandemic, where many might be able to cope with easily, some may endure hardships. As we shift to a new paradigm, adapting to the so-called new normal will largely depend on how prepared we are, especially our graduates. With this, the FEU Career and Placement Office, or CAPO, has designed a 13-part series webinar to give the students the basics of working and finding a job amidst the new normal. We have also prepared and migrated online all other CAPO activities designed to help prepare our graduates for the new world of work. Online mock interview and coaching last July, online exclusive recruitment last August, student exposure to industries, to name a few. We shall be posting all this in the official FEU social media sites and Canvas. So please check out our event posters and calendars. Let me show you a short video clip of Capo's lineup of activities for the rest of the year. episode titled Online Etiquette, Adapting to the New Normal, we are grateful to be joined by no less than a seasoned journalist from the online world. I am sure her valuable insights will be very helpful not only to our dear graduates but to all of us. The discussion on social media ethics during this new normal will be a great help, especially now that almost everything is done online. Capo believes that these topics should be discussed to prepare our graduates speaker. Bea, as we fondly call her, well, Bea, that's her name. Bea is Rappler's lifestyle and entertainment editor. Prior to her current post, she was a news reporter who covered the House of Representatives, Philippine National Police, and the 2016 elections for Rappler. She graduated with a communications degree from the Ateneo de Manila University in 2011. Those days, like most people, she works from home and fusses over her plants. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to your screens Miss Bea Cupin.
Hello. Thank you guys for watching, and for those who'll be watching after this goes live, thank you for the time that you're spending. I know it's a very difficult time for everyone. Like even for me, medyo weird na I'm talking to a camera right now. So, to add to what Miss Babe said earlier, I graduated in 2011. I've been with the Rappler since 2012, first as a social media producer. So, kumbaga, and also I'm a mid-millennial. So I've kind of lived in a world where there is no social media, but I've also grown up with social media. So hopefully, from what I know, both in work and in personal life, this will kind of help you understand and navigate the social media space a little better. So the presentation is called How to Survive and Thrive Online, hopefully without even trying too hard. So can you go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Okay, just a quick overview of what I intend to talk about this afternoon. No? So first, we're going to talk about why we're even online in the first place, and then we're going to talk about online identities, social media ethics, because we're all on social, whether we like it or not. My favorite topic, because I love online meetings. That, and then I want to talk about mental health, because that's very important, because most of our time na nga is spent online now. And then a recap of what I would talk about, and then I think a quick Q&A after. So before we move on to the next slide, I asked Miss Babes to please set up a Mentimeter. I only found out about this thanks to this talk. So I think they'll be flashing on screen a question from Mentimeter, or a Mentimeter poll. I don't know what to call that. Yeah, so I just want to find out why you are online. So I'll give around 10 seconds. Hindi naman required na sagutin to ng lahat. But I just want to have a slight no, I'll give you 1 minute na lang pala, because since you'll be going online pa for this.
Okay, let me assist you there. So guys, just kindly go to www.menti.com, and then once you are in there, just kindly put in the code. That's 2263129. So again, the code for the menti.com is 2263129. So 1 minute, Ma'am Bea, no?
A minute or two. If you can't
Okay.
access, I mean, because I know everyone's having a hard time with the internet nowadays, or even on most days. So if you can't answer, it's fine. But if you can, please do answer, because I want to find out um, how Gen Zers um, see their online presence. Like, why do you even bother? Oh, that's so cool. See, you learn things every day. Like, I didn't even know this existed before this talk existed. Okay, wow. Real time na amaze ako sa nangyayari. perhaps like 30 or 40 seconds more since people are starting to answer. I can't really see the screen, it's a little small, but I think the biggest circle so far is to communicate with family and friends. Same. Okay, last 20 seconds perhaps. Okay. I think we'll conclude for now. Can you zoom in a little sa results so I can see it also? Is it possible? If it's not, it's fine. Okay. So I only gave a few options. Realistically, people have so many more reasons for going online, right? But I'm seeing that most of you are online and on social media to connect with family and friends, and then for work, either I'm guessing current work or if for the work that you want to have eventually, and for fun. Okay, thank you for participating in the Mentimeter. It's very cool. Ngayon ko lang nakita yan. Okay, can we go back to the presentation? Okay, so I asked the same question actually to my Twitter followers. Obviously, since I am a mid-millennial, most of my followers are either millennials or Gen Xers, so they're much older. So the reasons are not that far off. Like, I have a friend who is online to document his life. I have friends who are online to socialize, family and friends. Some are online to get and receive information. Some, ironically, are online for their sanity, which I find strange because sometimes I feel like being online drives me crazy. Some people are bored. Some people are there for work, which includes me. And finally, some people are there kasi FOMO. Because like, di ba, kasi nga, 6 months into quarantine, most of our social interactions are done online. So if you're not online, the tendency is you will miss out on what's happening. And everything happens so fast nowadays, right? Okay, next slide. So, I want to first explain what I mean when I ask, who are you online? I'm talking about the part of you that you want to share in the online sphere. Bakit part of you lang? Kasi hindi naman nakaka-capture ng online interactions natin or ng online personality natin, yung buong pagkatao natin, di ba? Parang no matter how much you overshare or you share online, it doesn't exactly capture the entirety of you. So when you create an online identity, what things should you bear in mind? So next slide, please. This, of course, doesn't encapsulate everything, that you should consider when engaging online and presenting yourself online. But first of all, I want you guys to think about your purpose, right? So a lot of you answered family and friends, followed by work, followed by fun. So kung parang yung three pa lang na yun, kung iisipin mo, they would demand very different means of presenting yourself. Like, for example, I'd imagine if you're primarily there, let's say on Facebook normally, right, for family and friends, especially family, you might be a little more reserved, you might be a little more careful about what you share or what you say online. If it's for work, obviously, your goal perhaps is one day if someone wants to employ you, if they Google you or they search you on social media, they'll see the things they want to see, or they'll see you, kumbaga, showcasing why you're the perfect candidate for the job. It should be very different if, let's say, and then yung projecting yourself for a job, it's very different then. Kunwari, you're building yourself because you want to be a journalist one day. That's a very different kind of presentation online, as opposed to if you're building yourself as, say, an influencer, or if you already are an influencer, or you aspire to be an influencer. And it's also different if you want to be an artist, or you're an indie artist currently. So iba-iba. And on the flip side, kung online ka lang kasi gusto mo ng stan account sa favorite K-pop group mo, ibang online persona din yan. So you have to first determine ano bang purpose na online ka. At hindi naman siya exclusive, di ba? Parang halo-halo din yun. Kasi, like for me, my Twitter is a work Twitter, but it's also my personal Twitter. So those things converge, and which leads me to my second point, your level of comfort. You have to determine kung ano bang gusto mong i-share sa online world. I know the tendency is for a lot of people to share everything and anything. But you don't have to do that. For example, I am personally comfortable sharing my opinions on political issues or social issues that I'm comfortable that I know na may alam naman ako, or I've already read up on it and I'm comfortable sharing my take on it, because to me, at least in my head, I'm equipped to give an opinion on it. So I'm comfortable. Some people might be just as informed or even more informed than me, but they might not be comfortable sharing their opinion, and that's fine. This also crosses over to personal things, right? Like some people are comfortable flexing their personal lives, like flexing romantic relationships, family relationships, platonic relationships. If you're not, that's fine, right? So you have to determine din kung anong klaseng, like, yung level of comfort mo in sharing part of yourself online. Kasi you have to think about the fact na once you put it out into the online sphere, whether you're a public or a private account, you're still putting it out there for tons of people, potentially even strangers to see. So you also have to determine that. Finally, authenticity. I'll be repeating this point later on in this presentation, but the online world is a curated world. But I like to think even if it's curated, and like curated isn't a bad thing. Curated just means that you choose what you share online, or at the very least, before you share it, may proseso kahit paano, di ba, of fine-tuning, or at least like sifting um, through the wealth of options that you have. So to me, I think it's better off if your online personality matches who you are in real life. The tendency naman is your actual personality is a reflection, will reflect online and vice versa. But I have experienced that na I meet people online, and then when I meet them in real life, they're very different, which is strange to me. Di ba? Parang ang may disconnect if you're a very noisy, opinionated person online, and then when I meet you in person, you're shy, you're reserved. It doesn't make sense. So, and I would imagine sometimes it might be exhausting for that person to have to project na parang ganito akong klaseng tao online as opposed to real life. So, to me, it's important to stay authentic. I know that's a very gasgas word nowadays, pero just be true to yourself, because online and offline, they're extensions of each other. So next slide, please. Okay. So keeping it classy online. If you're wondering why there's an EV there, it's only because it's my favorite Pokemon. So because we all interact online nowadays, whether we like it or not, I mean, like even before the pandemic, like a lot of our lives are spent online already, more so now, because we're stuck at home and we have no choice. Most of our social interactions happen online. So I want to make sure that, or you want to make sure that when you go online, you present a good version of you, or the best version of you, and everyone else does the same, so that you don't add to what can be a very toxic and harmful online world. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, just quick reminders lang. First of all, be accountable for what you share. So this goes both for personal and public, or less personal, less you-related things. So what am I talking about? When you share news articles or like reports or any posts, first make sure you've verified that they're true. So I'm sure that you already know about those things. One, that you make sure that your source is a credible news source, or a credible person as a source, or parang verifiable siya, parang accountable siya also for spreading that information. So official news sources, legitimate news websites. I hope at this point you already know how to discern what's a legitimate news website, what's propaganda, what's fake news, or what's disinformation. So you be very careful about that. Because I know it's easy to say, shinare ko lang naman yun, parang hindi naman galing sa akin yung post, but the very fact that you share it, that you amplify it, you're adding to its spread online, right? So you have to make sure na verify mo yan, kahit, di ba, parang even if you don't have the power to take it down if it's false, at the very least, you have the power to make sure that you don't propagate and further spread that disinformation if it's untrue. And that also follows, like, when you share something, make sure that the source is, like, you can trace the source. So I know a lot of people like sharing things and then sa dulo, nakalagay lang CTTO, credit to the owner. Be careful when you do that, because sometimes, and a lot of people or a lot of, what's the term, insidious groups or individuals are guilty of this. they take things out of context. And then if it's not attributed properly, dun nagiging delikado yung images and things like that. And you have to also, and that connects to my second point, always get consent. So consent, when I mean consent, I mean like if there's an image that you're sharing, make sure you're crediting the right person, or you're not stealing from a person, especially like if a person happens to make money out of that intellectual property. You have to be very careful about that. And this is something that I only recently learned, because before, because I tweet things, and sometimes, from time to time, something will go viral for some reason. And then I'd have someone reply to the tweet na parang, can I screenshot this and post it on Facebook? I always thought it was very weird. Like, why would you ask permission from me? The very fact that I posted it online should mean that I'm okay with it being spread on Facebook or whatever. Um, so I used to find that funny. And then I realized, oh nga naman, going back to levels of comfort, siguro if it's someone like me na I'm truly opinionated on, I don't mind if my opinion is seen by other people, because that's me, that's my personality. But some people have varying degrees of comfort. Some people might be more vocal on Twitter as opposed to Facebook for a myriad of reasons, right? Hindi natin, or we don't have time, or we don't have access to that knowledge. So that's one thing, and I think it's especially sensitive when it comes to tweets or posts that have to do with someone's soji. Um, Kasi may mga cases na akong nakita dati na may someone tweet something related to their soji, and then it gets screen capped, and then it's posted on Facebook, and yun pala the person isn't out to their family. So na-out siya nang hindi niya sinadya or hindi niya pinaplano, kasi someone posted it on Facebook without his or their consent. So be careful about things like that, because you don't know the full context of the person, right? So to be safe, ask permission, and to be even safer, just don't cross-post it. The fact na the person just posted it on one platform, I think should speak a lot in itself. Third, remember that you're interacting with people. I always say this in interviews and in talks na parang we tend to forget that just because we're talking to an avatar online, like on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, you only see a picture. Sometimes it's a caricature, it's an literal avatar, because Facebook did that recently. We sometimes tend to forget na may human person behind that. Even when you're interacting with, let's say, a brand or a news website, for instance, I think people tend to forget that although you see, like for example, you see the Rappler logo, you're actually talking to a person who's minding our social media account. So when you interact, when you engage, remember that you're talking to a real person. You don't know anong context ng person na yun. You don't know how harmful whatever you might say might be to him or her, and you might not be present to see the consequences of those actions. But I have a caveat. I think it's a different situation when you're talking about government officials, elected and appointed, who we have to hold accountable. Iba naman yun. Yung context nito would be like strangers online or people we see online. So you also have to understand those levels of like accountability and prominence ng isang tao. Okay, fourth, say online only what you'd say offline. So I always say that, like even before, I always believe na that again it goes back to authenticity. Na you shouldn't, like, if you post it online, imagine before, if you have second thoughts of posting something online, perhaps it'll help to go through this before you hit like post, or if before you hit enter. Imagine yourself saying this to a friend or a group of people, or a state, like, or an AVR full of people. If you can do it, post it by all means. If you can't, maybe that's not something you should post online. And also in relation to finding future employment, if your future employer finds that post of yours, be it through Google search or be it through just scrolling through your social media feed, are you ready for your future employer to see that? Like, are you ready to be accountable for whatever post that you put out there? So I think those are things that you have to consider when interacting and engaging online. Next slide, please. Okay, my favorite. I love online meetings. I hope my sarcasm is projected online properly. So nowadays, for me, for example, in Rappler, all our intern applications are processed online, all the interviews are online, all my interviews for Rappler with personalities are held online, everything is online. So these are some tips that I've called through my own experience and also through actually articles that have come out on Rappler as a guide for people who now have to contend with holding all work interactions online. So next slide, please. Okay. So first of all, check your equipment. Hopefully, hindi ako napahiya tapos biglang pumalya yung mic ko ngayon. No? So before you even go online, check your audio, check your video, make sure everything's working, make sure your app, the app that you need to be in the meeting is pre-installed on your devices. Frame your camera if need be. And then second, remove any distractions. I will be for the first to admit my background isn't the most ideal. Not everyone has a studio space or not everyone has an aesthetic, background for their online meetings. But if you can, just make sure that it's not cluttered. Make sure there's no laundry pile behind you or something like that. And especially make sure there's nothing compromising or embarrassing behind you because you don't want to be the next viral person for the worst reasons. And also turn off your electric fans. Very, very useful. I mean, okay lang naman, I'm a little patient about, electric fans on during meetings, but just be a little considerate and, let's avoid that mistake. Third, dress the part. Okay, I know this goes viral and people think it's cute, na parang, oh, naka-short siya under like a formal top. That's fine, that's fine. It's okay naman. Just make sure that your shorts are still, presentable. If you must wear shorts or sweats or whatever, make sure you're not in underwear because you never know. In the middle of the meeting, your boss or whoever might ask you to retrieve documents that are beyond reach. You might forget that you're on camera. You might stand up and embarrass yourself. So just let's avoid that for yourself and for the sake of everyone in your meeting. Fourth, and this is huge of me to say because I'm having a hard time also just looking at the microphone instead of looking at my own video or looking at the presentation. Try to make eye contact when it's your turn to speak. Okay, next slide, please. And in relation to making eye contact and interacting online, make sure that you're on mute when you're not speaking. This will also eliminate any possible distractions. You never know, your housemate, your family, your friends might like pass by and distract from your meeting. So just put yourself on mute to be safe. Check your lighting. Kung may ring light ka for selfies, now's the time to use it. But if you don't have a ring light, don't worry, you don't need to buy one. Just make sure you're well lit. Like in my case, I'm just using my overhead room light. If you have a lamp, you can put it in front of your camera. And then if it's too harsh, diffuse it with bond paper. That's all you need to do. Natural lighting works as well, obviously, provided you're not having a meeting during the nighttime. So check your lighting. So the point is you want your face to be seen if it's an on-cam meeting, of course. Make sure your interconnection is working. This is hard to impose because as proven earlier, like sometimes your internet fails at the worst possible moment. So if pumalya yung internet mo, just apologize. Like you can ask na maybe you can turn your video off so you eat up less bandwidth and maybe they can just hear you speak. That's another possibility. And on the flip side, if yung ka-meeting mo pumapalya yung internet or whatever, like be a little patient because everyone's having a hard time dealing with, everything is online nowadays. Also, I forgot to add, I know I said to eliminate distractions. So those are things that you can control, right? Like your background or like a family member intruding your meeting. So what I do is, because we're all, I live with friends, I warn them beforehand that, hey, I'm going live at 3 or I'm recording an interview at 4. So don't knock the door, don't disturb me. Some people put a sign up outside their door that just says live at 4 until whatever time. If pets are involved, if roosters or like dogs or or a tricycle outside is noisy, just apologize. It happens. We can't do anything about that. This is our new normal nga as they say. Okay. Finally, be present and pay attention. I know this is difficult even for me because even in in-person meetings, I can tend to have a very short attention span. I'll drift off wherever, and it's more tempting when you're online because you don't have people, you don't have, you're not in the same room as the people you're meeting with. So parang yung chances na mahuli ka na nagde-drift off ka na pala or nag-cellphone ka na pala are less. But, be considerate, be present. Because, like, think about it this way. Everyone has showed up and spent their time. Speaking of distractions, I don't know if you heard that. That's my roommate. So, be present and pay attention. You don't need to, like, literally naman nakatuto ka lang the whole time. But, like, just listen. Active listening. It also avoids possible embarrassment if they catch you off guard because you weren't listening. Okay, next slide. Okay. As you can see, there's a recurring theme. I love Pokemon. Okay, keeping your mental health in check. This wasn't exactly what Miss Babes asked me to talk about, but I think it's important, especially when you talk about how to present yourself and how to interact online, to also talk about mental health online. Kasi yun nga, I think more and more people are realizing how huge the impact online interactions have on our mental, psychological, and our psyches, right? So next slide, please. Okay, take care of yourself before your online persona. I know I said that the online is the continuation of offline and vice versa, whatever. But I feel like especially now, kasi na-amplify yung importance of like our online presence or like who we are online. Make sure that you still prioritize your offline self above all. Because the online world can be very taxing and very toxic. Okay, first of all, it's a mediated and curated world. I'm sure that most of you already know this, but it bears reminding because even I tend to forget this from time to time, di ba? We're so tempted to compare ourselves. Oh my God, ang ganda nung damit niya, ang ganda ng mirror niya, parang naka-arc frameless mirror siya, ako walang ganun. Di ba? Parang ang daling maingkit, ang daling sabihin na, oh, their lives are perfect and mine is not. And it takes its toll on people, ha? I think, like the studies normally say, like preteen girls, but I think anyone is susceptible to, like comparing themselves and as a result being sad when they feel that they're not enough. So understand that it's mediated, it's curated, it's perfected world. I say perfected, not perfect. Because there's effort into making it seem perfect. So yeah, but just bear that in mind all the time that this is real, but this is a hyper real part of a person's world. So it's virtual, but also very, very real. In connection to that also, while I emphasize that it is a curated and perfected world, again, remember that it's real people you're talking to. Pero nasa mga, like, if you happen to like come across trolls or whatever. But most of the time, the people that you're actually interacting with are real people. So this goes for yourself and for others. Like when you interact, remember na tao yung kausap mo. Remember na whatever you say could have an impact on his or their lives. So interact with as you would any human being in real life. Finally, it's important, of course, your online persona matters kasi yun nga, it's what people find when they search you. So this applies to, if you're job hunting or like reputation building. It's important, but it's not all that, right? Like I think more and more people are more cognizant na it's totally okay to not be online. Like I know people who have shut down their social media accounts for security reasons or for their sanity, right? If you haven't seen the documentary A Social Dilemma on Netflix, you should or The Social Dilemma, you should watch it to understand what I'm saying when I talk about privacy and data integrity. But anyway, know that it's perfectly okay to want out, whether permanently or temporarily. Now, if an employer wonders why you don't have social, then just say na wala. I feel like it's better for me to stay offline. These are my resources instead. I mean, it's perfectly understandable for someone to want to stay off the online grid. So next slide, please. All right, in summary, you will want to build an online persona that's authentic. So the real you, quote unquote, or the real you that you're comfortable sharing to the outside world, accountable and responsible. So make sure that you're sharing the right things. Make sure you're not adding to the noise of the online world. Make sure that you're adding clarity, you're adding insight, you're adding sense into a very confusing online information highway. And finally, be kind. Um, I think this is important, and I know it sounds so corny, but I truly believe in this, na parang sa day and age natin ngayon, na parang lahat ng tao, parang bilib na bilib sa matapang, maingay, or someone who stands up for his or her convictions. Yes, those are very true, like those are very important values, but sometimes feel like we don't emphasize enough the importance of being a kind person online, uh, an empathetic person online. And I think like one good example of how important it is to stay kind online, I think, is the the vlogger Lloyd Cadena. Parang people know him for his humor, but they remember him for his kindness, because trust me, kindness truly makes much more of an impact than any other virtue I feel online. Okay, next slide. So in summary, as if you needed even more summaries, so be yourself, or at least the self that you are comfortable sharing. Verify, be accountable, be considerate of others, of and for others. Remember that online is an extension of offline. Don't be fooled. The online world is very curated. And finally, if you need to step back, by all means, step back if you need to. So that's it. I hope I made sense. Next slide. I think you're now allowed to ask me questions if you have any. That's my handle. If you're too shy to ask them here, because this is apparently streamed live. So if you have any questions, you can not DM, but you can tweet me, or you can anyway. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Miss Bea Cupin, for that very informative talk. I also learned a lot. So, without further ado, we'll be moving immediately to our question and answer segment. So, please, guys, if you have any questions, kindly just post them here at the Q&A tab. I'll be reading them to our speaker. I'm sure marami kayong tanong dahil very important yung topic na kanyang diniscuss. So, Miss Bea, for starters, no, we have one question.
Okay.
Anonymously. Sabi niya, is it important to have your cameras open all the time during a meeting, or can you leave it closed?
I think it depends on how the agreement. Ako, by default, I assume it's fine to have it camera off. Okay, ganito. If it's a job interview, and I think it's a little it's better to presume it's camera on, or
Mhm.
you know, kasi parang at least for me, when I interview people, I prefer seeing their faces, because it's already a very weird situation na you're interviewing potential applicants. In this
Yeah.
case, internships for Rappler. It's already very weird that it's just purely online, like, because the point of interviews is to get a sense of the
Mm.
person you're talking to. So I think it's a little better to keep it on cam, perhaps. If what I do, kasi if your internet is specifically difficult, the person I'm talking to, I'll ask them na, sige, I'll call you na lang, or whatever. But if all else fails, ask. So if it's a work meeting, magtanong ka, parang, do I have to be on cam? Because I don't know what your concerns are. Maybe you're not in a suitable environment, maybe your internet is low. I think it's a very legitimate reason to ask na mag-off cam ka na lang kung mahirap I mean, pangit yung internet connection mo generally or during that specific time. So yeah.
All right. And then another question. There are people tagging others as apolitical, especially celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
when they don't share their views and opinion. As if, di ba, kailangan lagi may opinion ng tao on their social media platforms. What are your comments on these? Again, it's from an anonymous student.
That's difficult, because I just literally said that it's up to I still believe in it's up to your level of comfort. No one, well, if you're a public figure, kasi parang ang hirap sabihin na no one can coerce you kasi public figure ka. But um, ganito, kung public figure ka and you don't feel comfortable broadcasting things, maybe because even if you're educated enough on it, you don't feel comfortable saying it, I think you also have to be prepared for the consequence of your silence, right? Like, kasi nowadays, kasi silence means so many things. And I think if you are well read on the topic at hand, and I think the topic at hand here is, for example, the ABS-CBN shutdown, and some of its stars were bashed or dragged online for not having an opinion. If presumingly na nagbasa ka enough on it and you believe and you truly believe na parang I don't think I'm comfortable broadcasting this. I think you should also be aware enough yung consequences ng silence na yun. So, yun, parang hindi kumbaga hindi ka pwedeng pilitin ng tao to say something, but at the same time, you have to understand where the disappointment might be coming from. So.
Agree. All right. Any tips for our students in order for them to have a longer attention span?
Huh. I think I'm very guilty of tuning out during long meetings. I forgot to say this earlier. So personally, as long as I can control it, I keep my online meetings down to 40 minutes max. Kasi I find in real life, kasi I can hold the meeting with my staff in Rappler. Kaya namin mag-meeting ng 3 hours and we're having fun. There's nothing fun about a 3-hour online meeting, you know? Like, even if it's an important meeting, right? It's exhausting on everyone. So, online, try to keep your meeting short, but attention span, ganito lang, I don't think there are tips per se, but think of it this way. People showed up, they are devoting their time, di ba? Tapos parang usually, it's an elaborate setup pa, di ba? Like, you have to angle your camera properly, et cetera, you prepare everything. So, just be aware na people have parang taken out this portion of their time for this meeting and you're part of it. So everyone's showing up. You have to show up also. Parang ano na lang, kumbaga, be mindful talaga of that part of it all. Na parang, andyan ka rin dapat, di ba? At saka, yun nga, it's a few minutes. Hopefully your meetings don't run for like 5 hours or 4 hours, but it's a sliver of your time. Just be present and yun.
All right. And this one, another interesting question. Can our employers have a say or control with what we share online?
Oh, that's why it's important to read your contracts beforehand. Normally your contracts will, I think it's a work. It'll stipulate what you can or cannot say, or later on after you sign your contract, usually the HR will have rules on what you can say and cannot say. I'm lucky because we're kind of liberal about that. And I think a lot of media networks actually are medyo liberal na about, like understanding even journalists have opinions on things. But a lot of in the corporate world, it can be very different depending, di ba? Parang a lot of brands kasi might not be very comfortable, like being associated, like them being, like an employee being associated with this whatever or trouble or whatever. So you have to make that clear. Do they have a right to do that? I'm not a lawyer, sorry, I can't answer that. But I think, ultimately check with your work. If all else fails, go on private. If all that fails, that's what your group chats are for. Talk to your friends, Dun ka makipag, if diba, parang if your, obviously your income depends on, on being, I don't want to say quiet, but not as loud as you want it to be online. There are other means. So, yeah.
All right. We have a lot of interesting questions. Allow me to pick somewhat related to work. Do you think it's necessary for companies to perform background checks, including on your social media accounts? This is actually crucial, especially when you're currently in a job hunt.
I think they do by default. I personally do not. Well, wait, that's a lie. No. Sometimes even for intern applicants, I will Google them sometimes just to see kung ano yung. I think especially for some companies actually, diba, parang they actually hire people to counter check you, especially if the job that you're applying for is a very sensitive job. So you can't expect that to happen. So I think you should presume that they will check your socials, or diba, worst case scenario, oops, I'm so sorry. Worst case scenario, you're hired already, and then later on they discover something really incriminating. You might end up losing. Diba? So again, it goes back to what you post online. You should be prepared. It should be something that you would say in real life anyway, and kaya
Mm.
mo panindigan. Kasi
Mm.
otherwise, diba, parang it'll cause trouble that you're not prepared to handle.
Yeah, so it's also what you post, no? Kasi may ibang question din ito, like how do you, like, should we take off memes now? Are people who are fond of sharing memes, should we also limit sharing and posting that? Again, if it's gonna cost you trouble, no?
I don't
Yes.
know. I don't hold memes against people. But I am also self-aware of the fact that I'm in my late 20s. I'm a middle millennial, and then iba na yung mundo kasi ng Gen Z eh. Like minsan ako hindi ko na nagigets, pero um siguro naman hindi naman bad thing na meme lord. Ano ba yung term ngayon? Meme lord, whatever. I don't think that's a bad thing per se, but again, if you're on the job hunt already, like just be a little self-aware. Okay, what if the HR of the company I'm applying for searches for me on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter? Like, is this an image I'm comfortable that of her seeing? Diba? Parang siguro maybe that can be like a loose guiding principle for everyone.
Okay, just a couple of questions. Maybe just narrow it down to three. One important one is it advisable to have different accounts to suit different personas, like one account for work, one
Okay.
for school?
Yeah.
What do you think
A lot of people do that. And I think even a lot of journalists do that. Like, meron silang official work account, meron din silang parang personal work account. But the strange thing for me is both of those accounts are public anyway. So parang ako, like,
Mm.
so on your work account, you don't express opinions. Pero on your private account, which is public anyway, you express opinions. Like, I don't understand why it's necessary to split that apart. It's for me, it's perfectly. I keep a private Twitter because like there are things that I don't want everyone to read, like as open as I can be on my my actual public Twitter. So yeah, go ahead. But things to remember though, one, screen caps still exist. Like you can say now,
Mm.
this post just for friends, or like close friends lang to sa IG stories, or like ano ba, um lock Twitter account to, but you never know. Like someone can take a screen cap, maybe even innocently. Like someone takes a screen cap innocently, yeah. Like your friend sends it to someone else innocently, and then maybe from there, no. I mean, you don't know eh. So parang yun nga. That's also what I tell people na keso private, keso public, just assume that it could be taken public. You never know. But
Mm.
for journalists, I feel like and we follow this. If it's a private post, parang wag na siyang, wag mong i-screen cap at pagsulatin kasi private post yun. Anyway, so, yeah, go if that makes you comfortable. I mean, like, not everyone naman, like, if you wanna, obviously, talk about K-pop standing all day, like, baka it's useful in a stan account na lang instead of it being on your main. But yeah, go ahead. Anything that floats your boat.
All right. And then this one, I think it's very important to talk about this. How do we educate or explain to people the dangers of spreading fake news or info online? Since there are cases wherein people, despite being informed, still spread these info, especially during pandemic, di ba
Right.
maraming
Right.
kumakalat
No,
na info.
it's super disappointing kasi even people who you think are authorities and who should know better sometimes still spread wrong information. Um, it's easy to say call them out, but I understand na mas madaling mag-call out kunwari ng kaibigan or acquaintance compared to mag-call out ka ng tita na favorite mo. Alam mo yun, parang iba yung dynamic. So, I think it goes back to your level of comfort also. The purist in me, of course, would say na call them out. Kahit mag-comment ka lang nicely, or if you're averse to public conflicts, PM them na, uy, parang mali yung share mo. And then give them, parang ito resource na to, ganyan, ganyan. I think it's also a fact. You also kind of have to be a little patient, which sounds so weird. Sila na nga yung nagsispread ng mali, ikaw pa yung dapat maging patient. Pero parang you also have to, again, mag-endorse ako ng Netflix documentary. It's called The Social Dilemma. It will help you explain how some people are sucked into this world of disinformation without even realizing it, right? So baka it's also a case of the algorithm playing tricks on that person and like sucking them into this world where suddenly legitimate information is unacceptable to him, her, or them. So, yun, walang hard and fast rule for me eh. Pero I think especially if it's someone you hold dear and you hold close, like close to your heart, like have the courage then to talk to them. It's for their own good. Nakakahiya din naman kasi na, di ba, mahuli siyang nagsispread ng mali-mali dyan. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. And then just a last question.
Right.
Any advice to our students, our viewers, even faculty who are experiencing online fatigue? How can they handle
Oh
such
my God, same. No,
all
I
of us?
do that all the time. Actually, to start ng pandemic, I had to deactivate my Facebook because I realized it wasn't doing me any good, right? So, one easy fix is to turn off, if you can. This is a very privileged situation. If you can, turn off all notifications sa smartphone mo. More or less everyone has a smartphone to some degree. So turn off your notification. Trust me, you don't need to know if X and X has commented on your picture or whatever. Like what I do ngayon, what I do is I turn off notifications for all my apps except my messaging apps because that's for work. And that's how it's the only way I interact with friends nowadays. So, lahat ng messaging apps, notifications on, including Facebook Messenger, but Facebook, Instagram, um, Twitter, I've turned them off for now. Para you don't get stuck into like scrolling your Instagram for hours and hours. What my friends did, what I do also sometimes, I delete the app from my phone. I don't delete my account, but I delete the app. That way, sa laptop ko lang siya or sa desktop ko lang siya ma-access. Or kung sa phone ko, I have to type in the URL. So, medyo may konting effort. Um, like I said, don't be afraid to take a break. It's still weird for some people, like, cause, oh my God, when I deactivated my Facebook, parang it took people a day or two to realize. And then I had friends messaging me out of genuine concern, like, oh my God, Bea, okay ka lang? And I'm like, not super okay, pero hindi naman, this is not a mental breakdown. Like, I'm fine. It's just that I feel like deactivating it will prevent future, So yun, don't be afraid to take a step back. Um, I'm sure naman if people need to reach you urgently, they have your number, they have your landline or whatever. There are so many ways to contact you naman. So, yun, huwag kayo matakot mag-step back. Like, normalize that idea. Like, just take a break. It doesn't need to be dramatic. Hindi mo kailangan mag-announce sa mundo na parang, taking a break, you can do that if you want, pero hindi magulat yung mga tao. But, yeah, normalize the idea of taking a break from, I mean, kasi in real life, we take vacations, right? To take a break from work. It should be perfectly normal for people to just cut themselves off muna from social media because it's very exhausting sometimes. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So there you have it, guys. That's Miss Bea Cupin, our speaker from Rappler, who talked about online etiquette in the new normal. And also to our students, thank you for sending in, and our audience for sending in your questions. I'm afraid we have run out of time as much as I want to read all of them. We also have other events upcoming as well. So our speaker spoke about online etiquette in the new normal, how we can effectively navigate and communicate in the online world. I really like what she said about the online world being curated. No? It's being constructed. So we choose what we put online, even how we behave. And thus, even though it is created, it still becomes a space where we extend ourselves. These may have an impact in our future work as well. So whatever you put online may be seen by your future employers or co-workers. And remember yung idea ng pag-screen caps na binanggit during the Q&A. So remember the identity you create online. Remember your purpose, level of comfort, and authenticity as you navigate the online world. And also, just to add, respect and be kind. Our speaker also spoke about the things we have to remember in as we continue our work, our education in the online world. So be present. And just to reiterate, also take care of your offline persona before the online. Such a very valuable talk indeed. So there you have it. That concludes our pep talk for today. And in behalf of the FEU Career and Placement Office, we would like to thank Miss Bea Cupin for her precious time. and also to our students, our faculty members, and employees for joining us. We do hope that you have learned a lot from this webinar. And I also hope that you guys can join us again. Allow me to invite you in our future Pep Talk episode. Our next topic is about how to develop empathy skills in the new normal work setup. So that will be on September 23, Wednesday. Just check the Career and Placement Office Facebook page from time to time for updates. So, as we end, may we invite everyone to join us in singing the FEU hymn.